Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, April 30th, 2026, and today we're talking about all the uses of garlic that aren't just a bulb, the pros and cons of farm cards and overwintered dahlias, like in the ground. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and feeling well and all of those good things. The weekdays are almost over, and although some of you are or will be harvesting for your weekends, I still hope the week has been good for you. It is also the last day of April with the Kentucky Derby coming up this weekend. It's always the first weekend of May. In Kentucky, in case you wanted to learn a little bit about our state, the Kentucky Derby is huge. It's a huge week for restaurants around Louisville where the Derby takes place. And beyond. Like, we sell to a restaurant that's about half an hour outside of Louisville, and they are straight up booked solid for the week. And I'm sure it's the same story through Lexington, which is about an hour away from the race. Celebrities pour into the state. It's a wild event here and a huge economic driver. Now, I've never been. I've lived here for the majority of my life, and I've never been to it. And as you can probably guess, horse racing is not at the top of my list of entertainment things, even though I do love being around horses. They're actually really fun. I'm also not a gambler, really. I'm not very good at it. But as a tradition, it has a big impact here in Kentucky for a 2-minute race, a giant impact, wild stuff. Anyway, I got some melons, lettuce, and tomatoes seeded yesterday, which I'm, excited about those melons. I probably have said that almost every day this week. I have a feeling that we're going to be, busier business-wise on the farm this year than I had anticipated with a couple accounts, which is great news, but also going to have to figure out how busy I actually want to be. Best problem ever? Maybe. I'll let you know when I figure that out. Let me know what you all are figuring out either in the comments section or through a video that you can send to farmermike@no-tillgrowers.com. Make it about 20 seconds. You can upload it to Dropbox or Drive if that's easiest, and then just share that with Mike. We appreciate that, and we love to see them. All right, so Thursdays are the day where we take Patreon questions, but I want to change the dynamic of the day a little bit and make it more about, just make it more engaging and encourage you all to think about how you would answer these questions, right? Best way to learn is to teach, and also gives it more of a group council vibe. A little therapy session, as I've been calling it, unfortunately. So we will still take a few Patreon questions, but I want you all to feel more empowered to think about how you would answer these questions and what you would add. So today's first question comes to us from Patreon member Stephen Rowe, who writes, quote, "Good day, Jesse and all soil nerds. I have always tried to utilize all organic matter that I produce back into the soil somehow. Chickens, worm farms, compost piles, biochar from woody material, etc. I have a small crop of about 4,000 garlic plants on a rotating plant, but it's only the last 2 years that I have enough quantity to sell. I started with 3 bulbs from an organic grocer. The amount of dried garlic leaves I have is significant enough to think of other uses for it than simply mowing, shredding, and adding to the compost pile. Was thinking perhaps using them as poultry nesting material. Have you heard of someone doing this? And in a more broader sense, using the non-sellable parts of crops in quote-unquote creative ways. Cheers, Rowie," end quote. All right, great stuff here, and you will know if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time that I'm a big garlic fan, and we grow a fair amount now. There for a while we were growing about, 5,000 bulbs, which indeed came with an epic ton of quote-unquote waste material, but I've stepped back a lot now that we're doing the farmer's market on the garlic at least, and now we're down to about 1,400 bulbs or less, which is good by me, but I loved growing garlic because it's such a useful crop. I mean, from start to finish, from the early spring when we sell it as green garlic, we'll pull like the smaller bulbs out and sell those as green garlic, to the mid-spring when we get garlic scapes. That's the flower of the garlic that you have to pop off anyway to encourage a bigger bulb by as much as 10 to 20%. That is a great market item. We also used to sell a lot of scapes to a farmer friend who does pickles. So that was like a good option for us to get rid of, 5,000 of them. Then we head into the later spring when we start to harvest arguably the greatest of all garlic crops, fresh garlic, which is the big, juicy, tender garlic before it has papered up. So you can see, the differentiation in cloves, but you can also eat the whole dang thing and it's delicious. I mean, don't eat it raw, but you kind of can. Frankly, that is my summer scent of choice. Sorry, not sorry. Then, of course, comes cured garlic in the middle of the summer after all the garlic has been harvested and it's sat for two weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It starts to get dry and it kind of picks up some of those more bitter notes that you often get from garlic, and with it several antioxidants. But from that, you also get the garlic mulch, right? Because you're starting to cut those heads off of the actual stalks. Now, there is no reason to avoid using that with chickens that I can come up with or find. In fact, there may even be some medicinal benefits, as garlic tends to be very antimicrobial, but I would say it's more than likely just, pretty neutral carbon by the time it's dried out like that. But yeah, as you grow more and more garlic, you get more and more of that, like mulch from cutting the garlic off the stem. For us, we will mostly compost all those excess stems, but I have mulched a bit with it in the past, just around like fruit trees and stuff. I've never used it for chickens necessarily, but I wouldn't hesitate. I guess I've used it on or in the compost and then let the chickens into it, which that was fine. Pretty much whatever you need it for, go for it. Garlic rules from start to finish. Love that crop. Anyway, let us know any thoughts you all have on that subject. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss prepaid farm cards like gift cards, but for farms, and who doesn't want one of those? Both a farm and a gift card. But then you combine the two, it's more like a gift card to a farm than a gift card for a farm. That would be a really great gift card. BRB.
Up here in Vernon, New Jersey, trying to take our garden back from the groundhogs because they like to eat everything I plant. 50 feet down, 150 to go.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. All right, back to the show. A quick loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Sally, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse, enjoying the daily show this winter. On my list for winter to-do tasks is to figure out an option for a prepaid debit/gift card for my farmers market customers. I do accept credit cards through my Square POS system, but I am looking for an alternative where customers can use a plastic card so as not to have to carry cash while avoiding the credit card processing fees. Also, the town I live in Alaska now has a special sales tax period through March where sales of unprepared foods are fully exempt. So I could sell people prepaid cards in March to collect some early season revenue for the farm while effectively offering customers a savings of 7%, which is the tax rate they will otherwise pay on their fresh produce at the farmer's market come June. Have you or others used prepaid cards at the farmer's market? I'm wondering how much it complicates market accounting and if it would be worth looking into further. I know I have some longtime customers who would be happy to commit money up front, as I used to run a CSA, but now am retailing exclusively. Thanks," end quote. All right, great question here. And sorry, I know it's after March now, but I'm slowly getting caught up after the voice apocalypse of 2026. This is an interesting idea with the tax situation that you have there, assuming, of course, that it's all above board and that all that good stuff to do this sort of pre-sell in March thing. So yes, we and many other growers have used prepaid cards, and it mostly works fine. On the pro side of things, the influx of cash early in the season is nice, and albeit to a lesser extent, replicates a CSA where you get your budget ahead of time, as the Patreon member noted that they have experience with. We struggled to sell a ton of the cards at the time, but it was a few $1,000s early, which helped. Now, there are things I liked about it, but there are a couple things that made the cards a bit challenging. For one, you do have to have some sort of backup system that keeps track of who has how much money on which card in case they lose it. Obviously, you could just say, sorry about your luck, but presumably these are customers you care about, so you want to be as accommodating as possible. So it's at least good to know who has what number of what card. Like, you can check the balances through the system, but if you don't know what the card number is that they have, then you can't check that balance. Also, selling them can be a little bit of a challenge. Like I said, maybe not as much for you with the tax bonus there, but sometimes customers can scratch their heads at like, what is the value here? Just asking like, why would I prepay? What do I, get out of giving you all this money so early? So we found it helps to add a little value to the card holders. The first value is that we gave an extra $5 on the card for every $100 spent. So if you bought a $100 card, it'd be $105 that you'd get back, or if you bought a $200 card, it'd be $210, etc., which was basically like 2 free items in our system per $100 that you spent. Then we also added that anyone who owned a card got a pre-order list and could skip the line at the farmer's market and just pick up their bag of veggies and be on their way and make that whole process easier for them. And in fact, that turned out to be quite attractive for some of our customers. They would just kind of swoop in the middle of the day, like 10, 11, when we're at our busiest, grab their stuff and then swoop out. which I don't know if you swoop out of stuff, but they would do it, which for some of those standing in line helped us to sell more cards, honestly, because they were like, wait, why did that person get to skip the line? And because we had their numbers in a spreadsheet, like the card numbers, we could, just run the card if they decided to add on a few things later or like on their way out of the booth without having to have them get out the card and swipe it. The biggest issue for us was just keeping track of the numbers and the balances, but because it wasn't a ton of customers, that was not a super big deal, and it really just wasn't that much work on our end. Honestly, having a few less people in our line was actually super helpful. So yeah, like I said, we got ours through Square, and they're still good to go. We still have some customers, in fact, who use it and pick up at the farm, even though we're, not doing the farmer's market anymore, which works well for us. For a while, and this may, resonate with some of your customers, we even sold it as a choose your own CSA option, where you're basically like buying the card as a CSA to support the farm, and then you're getting a little bit of extra, and then you can just pick and choose what you want by week. And in weeks you don't want to buy something, you don't have to. So I think that's not entirely necessary, but if that's something that we would like resonate with your customers, then it may be worth a shot. That said, it's easy enough to just call it a farm card, but you could get creative with the marketing there. Anyway, I think that's all I got on this subject, but others can feel free to add their 2 or 4 cents. Otherwise, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, no dig dahlias. Yeah, I said it. Be right back. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this next week, but you can see this is broccoli with Lacy Phacelia and teff sown underneath of it. And as you can see, some of these got a little bit swallowed. And what I did was I sowed the teff and Lacy Phacelia and a little bit of crimson clover, but it's pretty low in there. And I sowed that right at transplanting. So that's what that looks like. And then as I did it lighter, there's only Lacy Phacelia, no teff down here, and I sowed it a little bit lighter. This did really well. So these broccolis are coming along nicely. Yep, more later. Here's some fennel.
Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Good Agriculture. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping and tax filing, so there is no scrambling at tax time. They keep your books clean and up to date and show you where your farm's finances stand. If you're behind, they'll get you caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. All right, our last Patreon question of the day comes to us from Cliff Palermo, who writes, quote, "Nothing But Flowers by the Talking Heads could be Jesse's theme song. That being said, I recently checked on my field of overwintered dahlia tubers, and they look great. Was excited to see a ton of worms, just loving the nooks and crannies that the tubers provide. In order for me to do this in Calvert County, Maryland, 30 minutes from Washington, D.C., I took large round bales of straw and rolled it over the field like carpet in a dense 4 to 6 inch sheet. With this, I put my 9 goats and 3 chickens that just want to only live with the goats on the field to eat some of the mulch remaining field residue and to fertilize in place. A lot of dahlia growers insist on digging, cleaning, and dividing. I resist that mostly because I feel that the beneficial microbes are established and reside on the tubers. I'm curious if any studies on this have been done. In the spring, I'll use a potato plow to pull up the tubers quickly, split them up, and stick them in a newly established field, the field used last year. I plan on letting just follow, expecting the remaining seed from my hay and straw to grow. My other option would be to till subsoil and plant a winter kill cover crop to use the area again in 2027. Any thoughts?" End quote. All right, so as you, and of course Cliff, know, I am by no means a flower expert. I mean, that's probably what sparked Cliff's Talking Heads joke there. We have some dahlias that are just hanging out in a hedge, and they come back every year and do fine, but we are not trying to make any money on those. They're just friends. Almost all of our dahlia growing knowledge, though, comes from our friend Jenny Love of Love and Fresh Flowers up in Pennsylvania, and No Till Flowers, of course, great podcast. who we've done videos with about this particular subject and had conversations with on the podcast, and who actually helped with her and her team to mulch the dahlias 1 year up there in Philadelphia. She has also done several podcasts exclusively on no-dig dahlias, so in general, I would recommend following her advice on this subject almost entirely. Now, she is able to pull off overwintered dahlias in place through a good mulch, leaves mostly, and tarps that are placed over top. Jenny is in a similar but perhaps slightly warmer zone than myself. We're in zone 6B here in Kentucky. Hers is like 7B in Pennsylvania. So probably similar to you there in DC, but anyone interested in this would take their ag zones into consideration when trying to replicate this idea. You know, dahlias are a relatively tropical crop. So, of course, if you are on dense soil that does not drain well, this will not be a good idea because they will likely get soggy, which may be just as bad for the dahlia tubers as the cold is for them in terms of sparking rot. Also, it sounds like you dig them in the spring, and in this case, Jenny does not. She grows them in place as a perennial and does not dig them, hence the no-dig dahlias. Now, as you suggest, many people dig their tubers in the fall and have to store them over the winter, which can be both a ton of work and a lot of stress, making sure they don't get too cold or too warm. So if you can find a way to just effectively store them in the ground, more power to you and to your pocketbook and workload in the fall. For most growers, they are also having to deal with things like tulip planting, so freeing up a little time in the fall may be welcomed. One challenge you may run into, though, is the soil being dry enough in the spring to actually plow those crops up to be able to separate them without causing a lot more damage. Some springs, like this one, are relatively mild and dry for us at least, but last year was torrential rain every week, at which point you may wind up with dahlias sprouting and growing where they are, or perhaps, or definitely worse, rotting. Now, in terms of studies, there's not a ton out there, honestly, on the microbiology of dahlias, except, of course, in terms of diseases. There's just not a lot that I could find on like the microbiome of dahlias, especially when they're left in place. And there is also nothing I could find on leaving dahlias in place. There just wasn't a lot of research there. I think because this digging and then replanting method has become the norm and is technically effective in terms of like disease prevention, that is generally the approach across the board. But I see a lot of room for experimenting with this idea and finding small scale ways to reduce the labor involved in dahlia production and, of course, the soil turnover. Anyway, let us know, listeners, especially those who actually grow dahlias on any sort of scale, what you all think. Otherwise, I think that's it for this therapy. It's just never going away. I'm sorry. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is actually a very easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, another very easy way to help us out. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat like the Soil Nerd hat that I'm wearing today, or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of April, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to no new signups again today. It's all good. Totally understand. I mean, especially with gas prices going up so much. But if you love this show and the weird stories that I end it with, and it brings you some amount of value or just like the occasional dad joke, consider $2 to $5 a month to keep it going over there at patreon.com/notillgrowers. Thank you all for all the support, no matter what, though. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow for Feedback Friday. That'll be fun.